Welcome back to the Hidden History Happy Hour, sponsored as always by the Wolf Project, high-end men's skincare, which Alex and I always need, including the eye roller right here. I've actually sampled this now, Alex. It's quite refreshing. Have you tried it?
Yeah, as can be see, if many people on audio this is lost, but I've got bags under my bags, and no, I haven't yet. My 18-month-old is keeping me up at nights, and I will experiment with it soon with extreme prejudice.
Well, there's only so much cosmetics can do. Hopefully, everybody
Mm.
will get some sleep there. Alex, I'm enjoying. It's bloody hot here. It's crazy hot, so
It's
I'm enjoying.
yeah, same in London.
Enjoying a nice crisp Chardonnay with, I really classed it up for you today, Alex. My high school reunion memorial mug or cup, glass, whatever you call it. What do you got?
They misprinted it there. It says 10 years too early. You're still. I'm just on a beer. I'm on a San Miguel. It's so hot that this is what's needed to cool one down.
Yeah, it's I will remind you of this in February when we're at some meeting and you're sad about how cold
Yeah.
it is. This is what happens. Hey, a couple of real quick things. We're gonna get going, guys, right into our stories. One, Alex, have you seen F1 the movie yet?
I have not. It is on my to-do list, and it of course made me think of our Formula One episode with the amazing guest Zach Brown.
Yes, and not only that, but he's in it. He has a brief
Yeah.
role as himself, and it's quite a movie. I did see the movie before though when it was called Top Gun, but it's pretty good anyway.
Ha! He'll love having done that. I've had dinner with him a couple of times now, and I've interviewed him a few times. And I mean, not only is he fascinating about history, as that episode with us shown, the most
Yeah.
incredible collection of privately held history memorabilia possibly in the world. I mean, Mary Queen of Scots' death warrant, Nixon's resignation letter. I mean, it's just something signed by every president ever. It's just an crazy story, but he's just a fascinating guy too. And I thought the things he told us about Formula One, like the drivers talking in code whilst they're going around at multiple 100 kilometers an hour, it's just extraordinary. So I'm not surprised he did it himself, and I'm sure he was good.
Yeah, I reposted it on my X timeline, guys. So go to our YouTube channel or go find me on X, and you can find the Zach Brown episode, which is a couple of years ago now, but it was excellent, and he was a fantastic guest. Also, I was at an event in Hollywood this week, and I met a gentleman who runs a brand new high-end, super high-end rum company. First rum company ever to blend African and Caribbean rums and with an amazing story behind it. So I'm going to try to have that person on as a guest pretty soon and get us comp some rum.
That sounds great to me. Since Blue Run got bought, and we ended that season, and they were great sponsors while they were with us. But I've been missing some liquor, so I look forward to that.
And I forgot to mention, with regard to the Wolf Project, everybody, you'll see a code on your screen when you watch this, and you will be able to get the stuff at a pretty significant discount with our discount code. Now, listen, as everyone knows, we are all about these books by Alex, Lessons from History, cleverly titled More Lessons from History. And many times we try to have a theme for the show, whether it's naval daring do or family matters or bishops or whatever it might be. Sometimes we have the dartboard episode, which is I take the book out and I metaphorically throw darts to find the two stories. And that's where we are today, but they're so good, you can't go wrong with any of the stories. What's up first, Alex?
I'm going to tell a story about Jonas Noriega and his granddaughter Sylvia Foti, who she is very much still with us. And after the Second World War, Jonas Noriega led the revolt in Lithuania against the USSR as it had become, 1945 to 1946, and the Russians executed him. So that's the end of his story in some ways, but his name rings out in his country. He served in a lot of ways as the embodiment of Lithuania, very proud country, Lithuania, of their post-war national stories. Streets are named after him. There's a school named after him, and so forth. And his granddaughter, Sylvia Foti, was brought up in the United States, and she was raised to revere the memory of this man, whose portrait hung in her home. The Lithuanian expatriate community around her must have thought this little girl was blessed to be descended from such a man. And when her mother was dying, that Foti's mother turned to her daughter, now a journalist, and asked her to take up the Great Family Project, a book about her father, her grandfather, that would really tell his story and authenticate the legend and serve to preserve it forevermore and tell it to a new generation. And you can imagine what an honor she must have thought that was. So we can picture the moment when she's in the archives and turns from one page to another and turns her family's life over with it. Because in that moment, she turns to the page in 1941, where she sees her grandfather's signature written under the order to round up the Jews in Lithuania. And by his order, the Jews of Lithuania in the region he was running were sent to the ghettos and thence to the camps. And of course, we know between those two hells for those from Lithuania, almost all of them died. The Nazis drove that scheme of human slaughter, but they had collaborators in many of the territories they ran. Some Lithuanians had been complicit, and I'm afraid that Sylvia Foti's grandfather was foremost amongst them. And he wasn't just complicit. As her research goes on, it gets worse. Noriega didn't just sign a form or two, although signatures kill. Remember, this is what the purpose of the signature was. She realized the extent to which her grandfather was an anti Semite himself, who had greatly benefited from his closeness to the occupying regime. He wasn't simply, I was just following orders, or I had to do this because my family was being held hostage. It's the sort of thing you heard quite a lot after the Second World War. No, this guy was really very much a collaborator. And I just want to pause for a second and invite listeners to imagine that moment when her life bifurcated. Everything before it, everything after it. You were in a dusty archive. And some people say that history doesn't matter. Right? Then she must have had a dark moment of the soul, because bear in mind, her mother asked her to do this. Mother's no longer with us. The temptation to put her research in a drawer and just go and work on something else must have been incredibly strong. And it tells you the measure of this person that I endorse to you. It's been out a few years now. I endorse the book, The Nazi's Granddaughter, because she pushed on. She has been castigated by the emigre world, the Lithuanian emigre world in which she was raised, and by her ancestral homeland. Many people in it, at least. I think it's one of the bravest publications of our time, and the tough and worthwhile Cromwellian lesson to speak truth, warts and all.
Yeah, it's sobering and a lot of courage. This I guess at the time youngish woman showed. Does she record in her book, or do we know? The assumption would be that her mother didn't know the true story, but is it possible her
Yeah,
mother wanted her to learn the truth?
no, I absolutely not. I really do think that if her mother had known the truth, not only she would have hidden it, she never would have suggested to her daughter to take this course. It's the ability, and there's all number of these Nazis who fled to South America,
Right.
Nazis who managed to pass themselves off as people who were resisting the regime rather than within it, or there's all manner of people who wriggled away from responsibility after the Second World War, and to varying degrees of success. Clearly, at least for some time, Fotian died in 1946, but clearly his name was preserved extremely well thereafter. And the other point to make is that if you have cross-cutting interests, if you've got a national champion, and I'm sure that he was, displayed great personal bravery in the fight against the USSR, he was just also a rotten shit of a human being who collaborated with the Nazis in the worst way. And I really admire Foti for being willing
Yeah.
to see things through.
Yeah. Well, while we're on a serious note, because I'm going to push it a little bit lighter in a second,
Yeah.
a couple things. One, um, as we're recording this, there is a huge uproar in the United States about the files or non-existent files of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who died in prison. And I'm hoping that 10 days, 2 weeks from now, when this airs, we're going to be giving a little bit more thought to the victims of this horror and a little bit less thought to the political ramifications than my country is doing right now. Horrible, horrible story all around. And then to now make it a little bit lighter, what this story reminds me of, although not in any way, shape, or form with the gravity or the courage, is I don't know if you remember this, Alex, but probably 10 years ago, one of the CNN reporters in the US, I think I know, but I'm not going to say in case I misremember, went on this kind of Geraldo Rivera, Al Capone quest to find his family's roots with regard to the Revolutionary War, or as you would call it, the Upstart War or whatever. And so he went on this journey, did a bunch of episodes, ran everything to the ground, and of course he did learn at the end of the road that in fact his family did fight in the Revolutionary War on
On the
your
right
side.
side. Yeah. Sorry, I anticipated the punchline, but it's a very good one. So obstinately loyal. British
Yeah,
North America. Yeah.
exactly
The
so. And
remnant
the
of
other
which we
thing,
now call Canada.
right. The other thing I want to hopefully predict into the future when this episode comes out is if news reports today, when we're recording this in July 14th, 13th, are correct, by the time this airs, many more U.S. weapons will be flowing into Ukraine. And I
I
hope
really
that's
hope that's
Slava
right.
Ukrainian.
Slava Ukraini, Ukraini Slava.
So
Good.
as Bartlett used to say, what's next?
I should have chosen a Belgian beer. That was really dumb of me, because so some of our stories that we tell are about great battles and great events, like the last one, which got tragic and serious, and some are about whole lives. This is about a single disastrous moment, and it is apparent to those people. And I've spent a fair bit of time in Belgium. If you're willing to dig beneath the placid exterior of that country, Belgium is riven with simmering political strife. Yeah, it's made up of the southern bit of the old Netherlands, so it's famously split off from another country to begin with, and then famously split on language and culture within itself. Flems one way, Walloons the other. Brussels, I suppose, the it's pretty peculiar pearl, but the pearl caught between them. They take this topic very seriously. Governments have genuinely fallen over language issues. What signs are used in villages, what languages are used in schools. My point is, Brian, I'm emphasising language and the language you speak is a big deal in that there Belgium. And thanks to that background, every conceivable group in Belgium has its own parliament. Pity the Belgian estate agent who takes a wide-eyed couple hoping to get on the housing ladder on property searches around the average Belgian semi-detached house, muttering a kitchen, living room, debating chamber, speaker's apartment, and so forth. And so there's a Belgian parliament bloody everywhere. They have the smallest electorate for the European Parliament in the EU, the German-speaking part of Belgium. Anyway, Yves Camille Désiré Leterme, which would be the last time I have a go at his name. He was a silver fox and a former leader of the Christian Democratic and Flemish Party. He twice served as his country's prime minister. Two kind of, if any of my fellow Brexiteers are listening, he served as prime minister between Guy Verhofstadt and Herman van Rompuy, who are famous in my country for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, I'll give you a couple of Leterme positives. He could manage a budget. He turned debts into surplus. This is amazing in the modern era. Everyone would want someone that could do that. He's always been a strong and eloquent proponent of more autonomy for Flanders, which was his political mission. So he was executing the desire of his electors. He always enjoyed a really strong level of support in election, on a personal level, I mean, in elections. He was and generally is an assured media performer, which is really important in politics in the present age. Once upon a time, politicians could get away with being awkward and stuttering and uncertain and hesitant because their words were being reported, if at all, in print. And this is a different age, and the media age demands that you are fluent, and he is. But admittedly, that impression was marred slightly in a live interview he did once when he said that obviously French speakers are just not quite clever enough to speak Dutch. But everyone gets forgiven, I think, the occasional off-the-cuff remark, which probably sounds, especially if you're recycling a joke that you've told at a dinner party or something, it just comes out at the wrong time.
I would
Anyway,
never recycle a joke, but I know what you mean.
yeah, okay. We would triple the length of the episode if I started telling jokes that you've told me multiple times.
Yeah.
Always very well, by the way. generally, my point is he could stick to his lines. However, 2007, Leterme's having a tough interview on television. The journalists basically starts, we call it pub quizzing. You know, you're asking, well, we do now because a politician in my country called Emily Thornberry was being asked basic questions. She said, "Stop pub quizzing me. I'm not going to entertain like what's the cost of a pint of milk type questions." And so they asked him, what do you celebrate on National Day in Belgium? And he said it's the proclamation of the Constitution, which must have sounded like a good answer, but it's not. It was the coronation of the first king of Belgium, King Leopold. Now, his answer is a much better answer. That's probably what they should commemorate, given how bad the Belgians were as colonial rulers, but he got it wrong. And so he was a bit rattled, is my point, by the time the journalist then says, "Do you even know what the Belgian national anthem is in French?" And Leterme says, "Of course I do." And on air, he begins to sing La Marseillaise. I don't want people to get me wrong. La Marseillaise is a magnificent, rousing song. It's the centerpiece of one of my favorite moments in one of my favorite films, Casablanca. But to be clear, it is the wrong song and it is the anthem of the wrong country. And if you're a Belgian politician, that's probably going to go down quite badly. My instinct, given my background on such occasions, is always to think of the poor staffer who is in the corner, head in his or her hands. You know, I prepared him. I prepared him. How could I have seen this coming? How could I possibly have known? And of course, the answer is you couldn't. We have all said the wrong thing from time to time and found ourselves saying words we wish we could catch midair and stuff back into our mouths. I've done it myself on air. But this, I mean, really, this is special. I've been trying to think of what the equivalent might be in Anglo politics. There's a sort of equivalent because we had a politician called John Redwood, who I actually rather admire, very intellectually robust and thoughtful. But he was our minister for Secretary of State for Wales, and he was caught basically semi-mumbling, semi-pretending to sing the Welsh national anthem, and obviously didn't know it. People like me all rushed out. You know, young, sort of little squirts of Tories, desperate to progress in politics, went out and learned "Var hen iaith in nadai o nannoil ami" to make sure you never got John Redwooded. But this is different. It's even worse, right? Because this guy voluntarily sings the national anthem of another country when asked about his own. I think the closest I can get is the First Minister of Scotland, who are at the moment always in office because of how much they want to break away from the United Kingdom, giving a rousing rendition of "God Save the Queen." Well, no, that is their national anthem. "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," English national anthems. I'm going to correct myself. "Flower of Scotland" is their national anthem at rugby matches. But I think "God Save the Queen" is still recognised in Scotland. I'm starting to get myself into the kind of knots you can see this guy got himself into. But as an Englishman, oh well. Perhaps this moment inadvertently serves as a glorious demonstration of the diminishing importance of nation states within the march of the European Union. But for a politician whose entire career was based on saying that his own area should be treated as or be a country, such a defence doesn't really work either, does it? Anyway, he's still around. He's in business rather than in politics. He retired young. He's the Tony Blair of Belgium, if you will, I suppose. But yeah, God, I'd love to see him do another interview and sing a bit. I just wouldn't want to be his staffer getting the call from the party chairman afterwards.
Yeah. Well, our viewers and our listeners just got to enjoy life imitating art as you are a British politician and you just marched yourself down a little bit of a road there. But what I was going to say about this before that happened is I always like if I can work in two West Wing callbacks in the same episode. So for our viewers and listeners who are equal West Wing fans, you'll recognize "As I look out upon this magnificent vista."
National Vista, yeah. They didn't tweak the speech, Tim, because it was inside. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I wanted to also follow up on something I said earlier and then want to talk about this episode a little bit more. But as Alex always reminds me, I sometimes forget that the majority of our fans listen to the show rather than watch it. So what I should have done when I mentioned the discount code for the Wolf Project products is I should have said that that code is H as in Hidden History Happy Hour, number 4, and then the word 20 spelled out all caps, and you get 20% discount. It'll be on the screen during the show, but for those of you who listen, H420 will get you your discount on the Wolf Project. The What that story really reminds me of, though, too, Alex, is you'll see this happen a lot in American baseball games, sometimes football games, but I think the American baseball game cameramen are a little more bored than in football games. So they'll pan around the crowd when we're singing the national anthem, and they'll almost always catch someone mouthing the wrong words to the national anthem. Like they'll say, "Where the deer and the antelope play," which is in a famous American song, but not in the national anthem. I always find that amusing. And, politicians, as you know better than I, are held to a kind of a ridiculously high standard, but this happens all the time in American presidential campaigns. You're exhausted. You're in Boston and you talk nicely about the New York Yankees, or you're in
Right.
Iowa, you think you're in New Hampshire. So it can happen, but you're right. In the media age, you need to be on your game all the time.
Yeah, and those trips are. I mean, there's many defenses that can be made of it. It's people in each state feel like they've got a right to see the person who wants their vote to be president before they decide it. The grueling nature of the contest reflects the grueling nature of the office, and what better way to test than plunge people into the cauldron before they
Yeah.
get it? But it seems the beating in the modern age that your presidential candidates take is just unbelievable.
Well, and of course, what this causes, and the more serious side of this is digging into every single scandal that your family's ever been involved with for
Yeah.
100 years, is it deters really, really good people from running. Now, it also deters really bad people from running, so that's good. But it's, I mean, Condoleezza Rice, my old boss, when I worked in the White House, I think she would have made a spectacular president and a good candidate. She would never subject herself to that bullshit. And
Right.
there's a lot of people like that. So we lose out.
Yeah, I was a candidate in a general election here in the United Kingdom last year, and even at my own humble level and unsuccessful, of course, at that, I had some media
So far.
inquiries inbound that were just the most ridiculous, sort of partisan activism dressed up as journalism. And there was one guy in particular just kept going at it. He won't listen to the podcast because, as the hero of our last story says, he's probably not clever enough to listen to it. No, he's probably too busy greasing up to the party that he supports so obviously through his so-called journalism. But the the depths that our media class are willing to go to is extraordinary, and only I think people who are directly, and you saw it play out. You were an advisor during the highest level of an administration. You will have seen it then too. But I dare say, even I don't directly compare the UK and the US. Politics is fought in different ways, but the passage of time has only made things worse, I think, on both
Oh,
sides of the pond, and that is something we do have in common.
absolutely. And I sometimes feel like this character, grumpy old man from Saturday Night Live, and I'm so old that most people probably don't even know who that character is. But I also think it just is true in the United States that when I first started my CIA service, when Reagan was the president, that's how long ago it was, the sides did work together. And
Yeah.
it always reminded me of the old cartoon in the US where the coyote and the sheepdog walk together with their lunch pails to work, and then they punch their card, and then they chase each other around all day and they walk back. Famously, Reagan, when he was president, used to go drinking with Tip O'Neill, who was the Speaker of the House. Even 20 years ago, when I was doing this stuff for a living, there still was a basic level of respect and the idea that everyone, however much we differed, wanted the best for the country. I don't think we grant ourselves that presumption anymore for the other side, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So broad that partisan or radicalization of the nature of politics, that's definitely, I think, right in macro. On micro, it's very interesting. There's a guy called Adam Rappaport wrote a book called Inside the House, and he noted that in the age that people point to, where there was much more collaboration on both sides of politics, people were elected by their districts and would then go and serve in Washington for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And modern forms of travel, combined with the incessant need to fundraise, mean that people are always back in their districts. And that simply means that the off time that you might otherwise have to build the connective tissue, to build the soft power, to build the relationships that drive things beyond necessarily your own partisan base, that's gone.
Yeah, even I don't know, slightly before COVID, you had situations where members of the House of Representatives, the lower house in the US, senators would never stoop to this, but in the lower house, uh, representatives from other opposite parties would literally share townhouses in DC that they would live in when they weren't home with their families. I doubt you'll find that at all now. I hope there's
Right.
still a few. I doubt it. And part of the reason our politics in the US is so unbelievably polarized now is that in most congressional districts in the United States, thanks to this thing called gerrymandering, someone can look it up. I'll put a link in the show. Almost every district is won or lost in the primary. So if you're in a Republican district, the most radical right-wing person's probably going to win. And the same thing if you're in a Democratic district, the most radical left-wing person's going to win because those seats are safe. The general election doesn't mean anything usually. So we shouldn't be surprised when we get people in Washington who have absolutely no interest in solving problems. Their only interest is in blaming the other side. It's not
We
a
will
good era.
see what you're right. We'll see what happens in New York with this contest between a self-described democratic socialist and a guy who was, until this administration reversed course on it, indicted for some offences. And of course, I believe in the presumption of innocence, but I just make the point on principle that, and the politics is the other way around too. But in France, if the election was between a crook and a fascist, the French would always find themselves voting for the crook. So Chirac became president twice, having beaten Le Pen Senior twice. And the labels work in both those examples. I don't know what will happen in New York, but it'll be very interesting to see, because in that example, yes, the primaries have been vitally important, but the general is going to be really important too.
And it's actually even worse than you described because the person who lost the primary to the self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist himself had to resign the governorship of New York because of scandal. So
Yeah.
it really was kind of a rogues gallery in that election. And all I could say is I'm glad I don't live in New York City right now, and my daughter does, but hopefully it won't affect her too much. Speaking of children, how is the young lad these days? Other
Henry
than
thrives. Yeah, yeah. Henry thrives, but he regards 4:30 as a perfectly respectable time to get up. And why? Like the other morning, he got hold of his ruck. He goes to the nursery, and he got hold, and he sort of totters. So I carry, but he knows where it is, and he knows where the bag is. He got hold of his rucksack, like to go to nursery. It's like 4:45. I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, here's a tip from a parent who's at the other end of the telescope with my kids. I would record those incidents on your phone and then save that until he's about 12, 13, 14, and will not get up to go to school. And then you could say, look, you could have had all these hours back if you would have
Right.
acted a little differently when you were little.
Right.
Because everyone
Brian.
loves their parents telling them so, especially teenagers.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of parents with more experience than me tell me stories like that, and I got to tell you, they don't help one. They don't help one bit.
Well, the one thing I can tell you that is, in my experience, true and also encouraging is the things become a cliche for a reason, but there's a cliche that says the older I get, the smarter my parents get. So
Right.
you'll have to live through some struggles, but eventually you guys will you'll be pals, then you won't be pals, then you'll be pals again. And luckily, the being pals again lasts the longest. So salute.
I look and so, hello, my friend. Good to see. I've drunk my cheers.
Cheers. Great stories. Save you guys a little bit of time in your lives. Tried to make this one a little short today because people maybe are on vacation, not commuting as much in their cars, but enjoy it, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.